So I'm gonna explain about my backend project. So it is a mini project where I have worked as a backend developer, and I'm gonna explain about my project and what are the functions are there, and what is the purpose of that function. So let us see about that. So here, so these are the files which is having. So it is a backend file, and there's a form XML file, and with the git ignore where I can push it, and which the credentials must have to be not visible to the others. So for that, the git ignore file is there, and what are the things it should cover. And one more thing, there is a Docker file. So this Docker file is used for the deploying in online. So this is the source file, and this in this source file we have a lot of repos. So these directories are used for the separate purposes. So for example, if I open this service, so it have different functionalities. So for example, it is an authentication service. So it is used for the service purpose. So let us get to it. So first, I would like to go on with the model of user. So this is a coding platform. So the main user is here is user. So when I go to the user file, as you can see, there are a lot of lines. So this is a package file, and I'm using some dependencies. So for that, I'm importing it, and there's a one file like Jakarta persistence. So what this line does is, so for example, so it is a JPA file, so Java Persistence API. So it is a standard way. It will talk to a relational database. So for that, we are importing it. So here, so all JP annotations, like for example, this entity is one of the element of this Jakarta package file. So here, so these are the instructions that will tell the JPA, so this class to the database table. So for that we are importing it, and Lambok. So as for the Lambok, so Lambok is nothing but a code generator. It automatically writes some repetitive stuffs like getters and setters and constructors, and the two-string functions. So you don't have to type them manually. So here the star reference means we have importing all the inside packages within this Lambert package, like arguments, builders, and data. So all those like this data and builders as well. So this builder file, all are from this Lambert. And this is local date and time for the date and time purpose. And we are adding these entities, so which is all annotations. So this tells Java class should be mapped to a database table. So without this, the JPA will be ignoring this class entirely. So for that purpose only we are using this annotation. So this is table, and the table name is users. So let us see about this Pojo. So Pojo of this user class. So as a user, as you can see, so we have data here. So where like set user, get user will be there equals, and there's no argument constructor. So it generates a constructor that takes zero requirements. So for example, if we create a new user, it doesn't need to require, so it will already exist. And this all arguments constructor will generate all the constructor that takes every field of parameter. And for the builder, so this builder is, it generates a builder pattern so that you can we can write builder with the name is, for example, I am using a user named Tom, and with email tom@x.com. So we can use give him a role of user, and we can use build to create a new new user. So for that only we are using builder here. So these are all the basic lines we have here. So this ID is the user ID and string name for the username. So this column refers to the table which is in the backend. So we can get to the database and fetch the data. So for that it is a column. So this must be unique, and it cannot be nullable. So that's what we have written here. And there's a string type email, string type name, and for the user password, and there's a enum type. So which is the column definition we have given. So after that, the authorization provider. So for example, we have to give him some authorization for his account. So that's it. So next one is Google ID. So for this Google ID, we have been integrating with Google client server to add sign in with Google. And next one is string role. So the role can be user or admin. So admin can add problems and add users and remove users. And as for the user, he can just on able to solve problems only. And one more thing, that is streak. So initially the login signal will be 0 and this is the active days. So we can just add the streak after that. So these are the basics of this user here. So as you can see, we have some keywords like unique here. So unique means the email must be unique. So that's what it mentions, that unique is true. That means it must be unique and it cannot be false. So that's all for this user. So let us move on to this next topic. So that means the next folder. So let us, after this user is created, so what next process is, he have to go to the authorization part. So this is the authorization provider. So where we have an enum, which is local and global. So Google. So for the Google, you can sign in with the Google, either with Google or else you can create a local email and password. So enum is in a Java is nothing but it is a predefined set of values. It can only ever be local or Google. So it cannot be more than that. It can just be within these two values. You cannot accidentally write like, for example, so let us see why it is designed in this way. So we can using a enum instead of raw string. So it makes the intent clear and the code safe. So if you ever try to compare like the authorization provider is equals to local provider, so the compiler will refuse. You must use the authorized provider must be local in uppercase or lowercase. So for the case sensitive, we can use this. So this catches the mistake at the compile time rather than the runtime. So for that only we can use enum. So after this, it will throw it to the controller where it is get into the authorization controller. So when it get into it, so let us see the what is the purpose of this controller. So for example, the front door for the authentication is this. So it exposes three HTTP endpoints like sign up, login, and Google Line. So it receives HTTP requests and delegates all the real work to the authentication service. So we'll see to the service in the next page. So this is the authentication service. So in this controller, we'll fetch back to the next one. So we are importing the DTO files. So we'll after this file we'll see that. So we are importing all of them and some Spring framework with the annotations as well. So this the DTO is nothing but the data transfer object. So there are nothing but simple wrapper classes that will define the JSON type of request and it will get to the response. So it is nothing but converting the JSON file from the ORM to the client. So in this we can see this request mapping, API and authentication. So let us see what are these things. So as you can see, this is used to map to the database. So this API will call with the authorization and when it reaches there, so for example, every endpoint in a class will be start with this API and authentication. So think of it as a prefix which is applied to all the methods below. So let us see the constructors. So as you can see the constructor. So this is the data type, the class type, and the authentication service, which is given as the input to the authorization controller. So we are storing it, and after that we have three types of sign-in. One is sign up, which is local sign up, and login. We have if you have already an account, we must log in, and after that sign in with Google. So here we have some parameters. we'll give if it is valid or not, and the request, and we must return the response. So if we can create, we can just create it, and we can just return the response. And this is the response entity for this login method and sign up method and Google login method. So let us move on to the next part. So we have seen about the user creation, and after that, after the user creation, he will be moving to the authorization controller, and he will be redirected to the authentication service. So when it comes to the service, what the service do is, so these are the importing frameworks we must already do. So from the DDO file, so the data transfer model, and this model type, which is the user and the authentication provider, and some Spring Boot framework as well. So we have user repository and the password encoder and JWT util. So let us see this authentication service codes. So here, if a user repository find by email, for example, if we have any mail, so here we have declaring these variables, final variables, and we are calling a constructor here. So in this constructor, you can see the user repository, password encoder, and util package, and streak service, and Google token service. So this is a constructor to store the values. So let us get into the method of this function. So this is a sign up function. So if the user repository dot find by email, so this find by email is a method we have created. So we'll request to the, if this is the get email, we will get from the input form of the user. So if the mail is present, it will return the boolean value. If it is already present, we have to print the runtime exception, which is email is already exists. We cannot create a new account. If not, we can just create a new user.builder. The name is we have to get from the username, and the get the mail from the mail, and for the password we have to encode it and get the password from the user. So as for the authorization provider, we are creating it local, so we can just name it as local. The role is user, and initially the streak will be 0, and we can just build the new user and store it to the repository, which is the user database. So the next thing is we are generating token for this user so that we can map to the database and store the values. So the next is login page. So in this login page, we'll find through the first, it will fetch the data mail from the form, and after that, using this function, we'll get the database access as the user. After that, if it checks that if it is there or not, if not, we can just throw the runtime exception as invalid mail or password. So just here, after that, there is a Google provider. So if you have Google authentication, you'll just run. So every Google authentication will provide a unique key. So if it matches, we can just log in, or else the account Google sign in. This account has already been used by Google sign-in. So please sign in with Google. Okay. So next one is the password encoder. So if the password is doesn't matching, we can just again print invalid mail or password. So after that, for the saved user, so we can just update the string. So if he has already logged and he is logging in today, we can just increase the string by 1, and we can just return the saved user. So for the Google login, again we will fetch the data, and we are checking if it is already linked with Google. So if it is already exists, we can just log in it, or else we can create a new Google account. So if it is already saved user, we can just update the string, and we'll again store the token and return to the response. So it is a linked Google. This is a method we have created. So these are the methods. So create Google IO user, As you can see, we have creating, if not using the builder function, and for the response, we are checking it here. So as you can see, this entire method is only for the authorization service. So we still have Google token service. So which is we have Google client ID. So if this Google client ID is matching, we can just create an account, or else we can just skip it. Okay, so like this. So Google token verifier. So it will verify with the key which will be given by the backend. So we are creating a new user, and after that user information. So we are verifying the ID token. So these are for Google sign-in, and this is the Judge0 service. So this service is used for the compilation part. So let us see about that later, because we are just getting into the user. So let us see about the security. So in this security field, let us see the security configuration. We are importing a lot of Spring Boot framework and JWT filter as well. So in this filter chain, we are giving HTTP service as an input. So the whole purpose of this security config is that the master security rulebook is this security config file. So it defines which URL are used as public and protected, or else like disabled sessions based login, and it sets up some binary crypto password hashing and plugins in the JWT filter. So as you can see, this is the HTTP request file. So we have added one health file. So this health file is for a different purpose for the deployment. So where it is used for monitoring the website. So if the backend is getting to stop it, we can just give some fake request so that it will make it to be in still online. So for that only we are using this health file, and we have this request file. So in this request file, so we have session keys. So whenever you are logging in, you will get a session key. So if the session key is matching, and you will get a role of admin. You can log into a login admin page, or else you can log into a user page. So this filter chain is used for making the admin, or else making the user. So as you can see, so in this file, this is the cross-site request OAuth production, which is a browser-based session cookie attack. So this CSR of is nothing but cross-site request for production, which is a browser-based session. So since this API uses JWT tokens, so CSR is irrelevant here. So disabling it avoids will be false rejection of the valid API calls. So this authorizes will call the function of authorization service and check it. So there are some rules are checked top to bottom. First match means, for example, this health is nothing but it will opens to anyone. So used by the some hosting platforms. So check if it is alive or not. So for that monitoring purpose, we are added a health function. And for the next thing, we have this star function. So it is open because of the sign in and login. So we can't require any token here. And for this request match, it will follow up along the admin role for the adding problems. And this is a password encoder. So we have two bean constructors to just store the value and initialize the value. So next for that JWT filter. So let us see the purpose of it first. So it will run on every HTTP request. It reads the authorization header and extract the JWT and validates it. And if it is valid, it will tell the Spring security to the user. Finally, it extends once per request filter. So here, as you can see, we have should not filter function and do filter internal function and some authorization header functions as well. And we are logging in using JWT token of a user mail and as well as the password. So it is a filter chain. So we are using it for the filtering options. So let us see the util package. So in this util package, we have secret and expiration. So the utility class that creates the JWT token on the login and it will validate and read them. So this secret is the secret line will read the value from the application properties or else the environment properties. So this is how the Spring injects the configuration values into the fields and it never hard code secrets in the code. And for this constructor, it generates the token and store it in this values. So it generate token, it will get the email and the role, and finally it will claim the role from the user. For that, if he is a user, you must have some some functionalities only. He must have only a valid amount of access so that he can do the certain things and he can't do some certain things. So that's why we are using this. So next move on to the security page custom user details. So this is a service which is bridges between the security and the database. The, the Spring the Spring security needs to be load a user's details like username, password, and roles during the authentication. So this class will teaches it how to do that from your user table. So in here, in the user detail service, so the custom data service which is implements from the interface. So now this service, so this user detail service, we have some constructors to get the value and we are doing some polymorphism. So in this load by user load user by username, we are using a find by email. So the username is nothing but the mail. So using this mail, we are checking with the password, and if the user not found in the mail, we are returning the username with some issues. So here we are having user get mail and password to get the user mail and password, and if there is no password, we can return null. There is if there is any password is there, we can just return the password. If not, we'll just return a empty string. So it is nothing but a user object. So it is different from this user model. So the key points is here, if the password is null, for example, the Google users. So instead of that, the Google users use this a special string security placeholder. So there is no password encoder. So it is treated as a NOOP authority. So the role may be user or admin. So the role prefix is required for a hash rule admin to work correctly in the pre-authorize. So why it is designed in this way is the Spring Security doesn't know anything about your database schema. So the service is adapter that translates between your custom user entity and the Spring Boot service. So we have seen about this security folder. So the filter, util, and configuration, and the custom user details. So now let us move on to the service page. So we have already seen about authentication service. So now let us go on to the Google token service. So this service also we have seen. So the user login and this user creation. So let us move on to the next one, the Judge0. So before that, we have to see one more thing. So whenever this loads, it will get into the object creation. So it will go to the Google authentication request. So what is the purpose of this file is that the shape of the JSON body is the front end, which is sent when triggering by the Google login button. So it will generate the ID token. For that, it is getting the token and storing it here. So this not blank is a validation constraint. So the ID token must be present and not empty. When the controller uses a valid, so add valid. So the Spring checks before even calling the method. So why it is designed in this way, and DTO acts as the contract between the front end and the backend. So this DTO file is data transfer object. So using this dedicated class, instead of passing a raw string, we can just make the API self-documenting and enables validation. So the main purpose of this website is that problem solving. So here in this model we have seen about the authentication provider. So next one is problem solving. So in this problem we have one table. I am just problem. So in this, so so the problem title and the problem level of difficulty, easy, medium, or hard, and the problem category like arrays, strings, and the next one is the problem description and problem input format and output format like numbers or arrays, and the next one is the constraints. So the input range and the complexity it should be, and the acceptance rate and the total submissions and the accepted submissions. So the next one is the tags like for example array or DB. So we can easily sort it based on the problem's numbers. So after this problem, so each of them have some test cases. So for the test cases, a input and expected output is there, and is hidden is nothing but if it is a hidden test case or not. And each problem have a problem ID so that we can relate this test case to the specific problem. And there is a one thing called fetch type dot lazy. So this fetch type is nothing but a JPA. So the JPA won't load the parent problem object unless you explicitly access it. So this is a optimization. So loading a test case doesn't also load the entire problem. It will just load the specific test case only. So for that we are using this fetch many to one type. So after this test case is there, we have to control this. So which is the problem controller. So the problem control is there. So get mapping. So we are going to add it in a list with the problem DTO. So we'll get the problem ID and get by ID. We'll just add it. So this is nothing but adding and deleting, which has only the role of admin. So admin can only do update, create, and delete. So this is a CRUD operation for this problem, which is problem controller. So the next one is after the problem controller, we have to see about the problem service. So there is a CRUD operations in the problem service. So far, if you update it, so the service have the file and it will connect to the DB so that it can update it. After that, it will transfer it to the DTO files. So it will get into it. So the problem DTO is here. So as you can see, these have the value. So this will create a constructor to store the value. And in this constructor, the problem service are created and added there, or else if you do any CRUD operations like deletion, it will add it to there. So next thing is submission. So in this submission, so you have problem ID, the user ID, and the submission ID is there, that is the ID, and after that the code which you will write it, and the programming language, and the verdict which is accepted or wrong answer or time limit exceeded or compile time error. And so the next one is the total execution time and the memory. So these are the basic submissions. So after this submission, it will again transfer to the submission controller. So in this submission, so this is which is connected to the DB. So this controller will connect to the DB to do the performing some tasks. So the DTO files, which act as a converter, like a translation tool, and this is the running command and this submission, and this is the user ID, and this is the get user ID function to get the user ID. So after this, the submission will be transferred to here, which is the submission request. So the submission request is with the problem ID and the language standard input, and after that there is the expected output. It will respond with the verdict and the total number of test cases passed and total count and the results. So here it will connect it to the test case DDO as well. Finally, the test case result, the expected output, the actual output, it is passed or not, and it is the execution time. So we have seen about this. So the next thing we need to see is the create notification. So the user must notify the admin must notify the all other users. So for that, this function is there, the DDO function. So this is create notification and the notification DDO. So the basic structure of it. The next one is notification controller. So which is connected to the DB for a request and response to get notification, and if it is marked as read or not. So the same user ID which he can see or not. So if not, we can just return user not found. So this is for the controller, and we have completed all the DTOs and the model as well. So the user. So in this user, we have one thing, that is user notification status. So he's see or not. So if he saw, it will be changed to read, and the time is which time he is read. And for the repository, it is a database. We are connecting all of them with the storage of linked list here and array list as well. So as for the service security, we have seen all of them, and the Judge0 is nothing but a compiler. So the compiler. So I'm using community edition Judge0 compiler API. So which will get the response and put to it and find the output, and finally it will return this verdict. Is it accepted or wrong answer or compile time error, runtime error, or any error other than that? It will just return error. And what are the language you can use? So it is based on the entire compiler, which is Judge0 service. And we have seen about all of these functions. And this is the basic structure of this backend application. And this is the Dockerized file. And this is the basic Maven. So that's all about this project. Thank you.